Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the big mystery, to the unfolding of our life's plan. We didn't even expect or know that it would happen this way, and then poof, we get this big surprise and this wonderful opportunity unfolds in front of us, and we have like an amazing, incredible journey. And it's so much better when we take that step into the mystery, into the unknown, into the divine, to discover that new path, than like staying in the small and the known and the boring and the safe and tried and true, all that stuff. Like, forget that, man. We're adventurous souls on Soul Nectar Show. And so I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird, and I love to help people get adventurous in their lives and really follow that inner call, that pulse, that voice, that one that knows, that's telling you, hey, this is a better way. And if you're interested in getting going with that, of course, you can hop on board with Butterfly Circle at our next opening. We have several openings. January, April, and September are the opening points. So wherever you're listening to this, those are the times you can hop on into Butterfly Circle and start the year-long training program on metamorphosis, guided by yours truly, Butterfly Mariposa. Okay, so today's guest is really fun. I was on Rick Paddock's show, and it was great. I'll put a link to it in the show notes so you guys can check it out. But really awesome podcast, really wonderful information he's sharing out there in the world. And so I'll put a link to that for you guys. And so let me just tell you a little bit about Rick. So as an instructor, hypnotist, and podcaster, Rick Paddock loves to teach others about the expansive powers of the human mind. Rick is an instructor for the International Certification Board of Clinical Hypnotherapists and the founder and director of the MidAmerica Hypnosis and Mindset Training Center, as well as the Milwaukee Hypnosis and Wellness Center. He is the author and producer of many successful personal improvement products enjoyed by thousands around the world, including 3 books and over 50 audio and video programs. He's a sought-after speaker and is presented at the HypnoThoughts Live, the world's largest hypnosis conference, and the 2020 HPTI Winter Hypnosis Conference and HypnoBizNY New York. He is also the host and producer of the Mind Flipping podcast, which of course is why I was interested in it, because look at that. You guys know how much I love mind flips on this podcast. I was just like flip my mind all day long. And so when I saw that, I was like, yes, I want to be on the Mind Flipping podcast, in which he interviews world-class experts in hypnosis, NLP, meditation, neuroscience, and coaching. And so I'm so excited to have you on my show now, Rick, because I enjoyed my show on your Mind Flipping podcast.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. And I'm excited to connect with you again. I loved your intro, all those things you're talking about, the unfolding, boring if we don't take risks, the metamorphosis. Just hearing it, it excites me. I love it all.
Yeah, we're here to experience life, right? Not just like kind of get by.
Absolutely.
What are you using your opportunity for? So I know that you've used your opportunity for good. So tell us a little bit about how you got hooked into all this mind expansion and flipping, and how you got brave enough to flip your own mind and hypnosis and all those things you do. Tell us a little bit more about your journey.
Sure. Yeah. How did it happen? Well, I like to say in many ways, I've always been a student of the mind. I think I came into the world with curiosity, especially curious about how it is that some people come into this world, incarnate in these bodies with, on one hand, there are those who seemingly are up against obstacles. Maybe they're born into a situation, a family situation, a place in the world, or even physical limitations where, by all other indications, life should be a struggle for them, and yet they succeed, quote unquote. They live a life of joy, of passion, of abundance. And then on the flip side, there are those who are born into situations where they should just thrive, and they struggle, emotionally and on so many levels. And it's always been fascinating to me, and it always comes back to this human mind, and what we make of our connection to the, if we would say, one mind or the many spirits, and it's fascinating. And so I've always had that. I've always liked reading about discovering and helping others, believing in the potential of all of us. But like so many of us, uh, I've been out trying to take care of number one, right? We take care of ourselves and do what we think we're supposed to do while trying to figure out what I'm really supposed to do. And so I've done a number of things. I've been a small business owner. I've had 3 different businesses, and the middle one was a real estate investment business. And I, like many people, 12, 13 years ago, took a hard hit when the market turned, and that led me deeper into who I truly am. As so many hardships, as really all hardships and crises do for us, they lead us, back to ourselves, our essence, our soul nectar. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I found more and more, once again, the unfolding of the layers to who I truly was. And so I came into the field of life coaching. I recognize in many ways, probably like you, Carrie, we've always been coaches on some level, and then we get training, or we're a little bit better at it. And then through those processes, though, I learned hypnosis, or at least hypnotic processes like visualizations and guided imagery and meditations, and recognized through a little more research and study that those were actually what others would call hypnosis. And it really doesn't really matter what we call it. They're all ways to get, in many ways, that human mind out of the way and get connected to, I like to say, one mind, God, spirit, where we really have our individual specialized truths. And so through hypnosis and coaching, I've discovered more and more what I like to do in this world to help people, as I like to say, flip their minds. And, when something isn't working, it's looking at, just like in a home, I used to be a house flipper, and getting into what I call mind flipping, I recognize there's a lot of the same processes. There's an illumination of what's not working, or like a home, how come there's a bad smell in here, or there's a spot on the roof. And then you investigate, all right, what caused this? You then either eliminate the problem and or create what you want. So just like we flip houses, we can flip our minds in often similar ways.
I love that analogy of house flipping to mind flipping, because I think it's very much the same. Alana Van Zant has a book that I read at one point on my journey that talks about how you go from basement living. Like most people are living in the basement of their house, their spiritual house, and they don't even know it. They're just like hanging out in the basement all day long. But there's all these other floors of the house, and what you want to do is get up to the attic. So it's kind of like rearranging how you interact with your house, like your spiritual house, your vessel that you're in. And maybe the kitchen's in the wrong place in the house, because like that's how you were told it was supposed to be, but you're like, no, I don't really like the kitchen there. I want it over here. I want it on this floor, and it works out better for me over here. So it's like being brave enough to change it all around, right?
Yeah, I love that. Being brave, and then even just recognizing we do have choices. We have options. We don't have to leave the kitchen. We don't, where it is. We don't have to stay in the basement. And I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people is, and that's where, challenges and crisis and hardship will illuminate the fact that, oh, wow, I don't have to live this way. Actually, I can question it. I can change it. I can remodel it. I can update and improve it. Now, when I work with clients individually, if it's appropriate, I've got a graphic that kind of shows all the different rooms in a house. And then we just kind of investigate and we explore, if we use this metaphor, what rooms in your house need updating. For instance, the bedroom might be, how's your primary relationship? That's fantastic. But your game room, are you having enough fun? Are you playing enough? Maybe you're just all work, and we need to incorporate that. And so we can go all kinds of ways with that metaphor.
Oh, I love that metaphor.
Yeah.
It's fun how a lot of people try to renovate themselves to fit into a situation that actually isn't natural, like in a way, like it doesn't work for you. Like, but you keep trying to, like I did this for years, right? Trying to renovate myself to fit in to a situation that I had committed to. But there's also this point where you realize, that this house just doesn't work for me anymore. Like I got to go to this other house, or like there's
Yeah.
some other opportunity for me opening up, like whether it's a job or a relationship or something like that, where you're trying to like smash yourself down to be like and twist yourself up in knots to try to fit into some paradigm, but it doesn't work.
I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that, where we, try different things. And often some of those things we try, professionally or personally, are things that, our parents or friends or society thinks, where we should be. And so to your point, we try to fit in and squish in, and we think I'm going to change who I am. I'm going to renovate and update my life. And they pick something because somebody else is expecting it. And well, I need to make X amount of money, or I need to do this. And, playing again with that house metaphor, the appeal of a tiny house. Oh, we can save money, and we can, be minimalists. And for a lot of us, myself included, it's appealing. I like that, but yet is it really the best thing for me? Um, yeah. So that's a great question, or great point to make. Looking at what are we, this renovation and updating our life, is it truly what's right for us?
Yeah, because sometimes, it gets a little tricky, Rick. I know you've run across this little bridge, this little trick bridge, where sometimes the thing is you want to go towards a change, but then you're stuck on something, or a creature comfort, or some place where you don't want to let that go because it feels vulnerable. It feels too vulnerable to let that go, to go into the new thing. That would, to me, is an area where, like, you probably want to push through that, right, to get to the other side. But then alternatively, there's also places where you just trying really hard, like with your heart open and everything, to try to smash yourself into a situation to make it work, and it just doesn't work. So how do you tell the difference between whether it's you sort of resisting, you know, a change, or resisting a new growth part, or it's you kind of like really just don't belong there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that I have the answer, but one of the things that comes up for me is that's where you get other perspectives, whether it's family or friends, or even, and usually even better, is a professional, having somebody to bounce ideas off of, because often, as we know, those closest to us will say what they think
Well, they
we
like to
want them
keep
to
you in
say.
their matrix, right? Because if you change, they have to change, and people
Yeah.
don't like that, I
Yeah.
found.
So depending on, yeah, how close they are, and how much of your change is a threat to them, you don't want to listen to them. And that's where getting somebody, a third party, third person, somebody that perhaps is a professional in the field you're thinking about, or at least, in personal improvement and personal development, is a great way to kind of get feedback. Hey, this is what I'm doing. Am I missing something? This is what I'm feeling. How does it feel to you? So I think that's a great way to recognize, you know, is it time to give it up? Is it time to go over a different bridge, or a new path, a new roadway?
Yeah, I started following this idea that, like, I could follow my bliss. I've heard so many people say, "Oh, follow your bliss, and then things will work out." And so I started following my bliss, and it was following. And then what some people in my family would say is, they're like, "You're just happy because you don't have to do this hard thing that you didn't want to do." I'm like, well, but I think I'm following my bliss, and I think that, it definitely has its own challenges in following your bliss, because you got to go against what everybody else around you is telling you they think the right way is
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, it is challenging. And that's where have to look at, all right, what do I want out of my life? Is it comfort? And is this bliss taking me further? Because as you pointed out in your intro, there is that desire, at least for us and your audience, of growth, of unfolding, of continuing on the path. And it would be easy to just stay still and in comfort. Now, comfort, I think, can still happen while we're pushing ourselves. We can find comfort, you know, where we are recording this in the midst of an uncomfortable time
Yeah,
in
we
our
sure are.
in our society. And I know, it's launching midsummer, and so who knows, where things will be with, the collective health and financial consciousness of the world. But even in that discomfort, there can be excitement, for, even though there's a lot of unknowns, this feels really good, this unfolding.
Yeah, the unfolding feels really good. Like, we're right in the middle of where, let's see, we're recording this at the end of March. So just for reference for everybody. So Rick and I are recording in the end of March. And so this is going to air, the middle of July. So we'll have just come out of, by predictions, we'll have just come out of, like, pretty much worldwide impact, right? That's the predictions that they're making, is that it's going to be like, the end of June or something before we really fully pull out of this situation and then start figuring out what to do. So isn't it interesting to have this moment where we get to make some predictions and then see what happens on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. So we should really reach out, like, let's make some bold predictions here. And then people can
Yeah.
say, wow, look at them. They're so, intuitive, or wow, are they silly? Listen to these
Look at
things they
those
said.
silly people. So this is really interesting, Rick. Let's talk about this for a second, because what I notice I tap into on my journey since I changed, and went on my soul's journey, is that I've been tapping into this place of knowing, like tapping into this place of intuition and beyond intuition, just sort of like a sense of knowing certain things.
Yeah.
And what I notice out there in the world, and what I notice like the whole way through some of my primary relationships in my life up until 9 years ago, is that they're very based in like proof. Like, I want facts, I want figures, I want studies, I want reports. But the thing about facts, figures, studies, and reports that I realized along my journey of all of this exploration through high tech and everything is it depends on the lens that you're looking at things with, that tells you whether or not it's like correct. In other words, if you start off thinking one thing, you can prove it through all your stats and figures. And somebody else coming from a different perspective can totally prove their stuff as well. And so there's competing data. And then throw in some big business interests into that. And now you've got a whole big mess of like, how do you even know the truth? Like, so if you're relying on stats and figures and studies to tell you the truth, there's a whole lot in there to tease out, wouldn't you
Yep.
say, Rick?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole confirmation bias, where we can find, those things that support us. I play with my clients and on my podcast, with my students that I train in hypnosis, this acronym, this phrase, IAMU, which is IAMU, an acronym that I use in a couple of different ways. First of all, it's to remind my students and my clients that these thoughts and feelings that we have, it's all made up. It's all made up.
It's all made up,
IAMU.
even all
It's
the
all made up.
studies that they do.
It's all made up. To some degree, it's all made up. So if we're going to make up our stuff, which is how we think and feel, how we act, let's choose to make up some good stuff. Let's release the stuff that's no longer serving us, and let's make up some good stuff. And if we want to have our own positive confirmation bias, let's do it. We don't need to get anybody else's approval or agreement. Let's be in our own fantasy world intentionally, because we all are accidentally often. Right?
I love that. Yes, it's absolutely true. You've probably read The Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart.
I have not.
Okay, you would love that book, actually.
I
So
sure would.
she's a scientist, right? And so she conducted all these scientific experiments to understand the power of intention with scientific study. Because if you come into an experiment already having an idea of what you're proving, you're influencing the outcome of the scientific study, which is what so many people do out there in the world, like the FDA included, like all of these companies that are doing like scientific research on this, that, or the other thing. And then
Yeah.
they put it out like, this is the facts.
Yeah. Oh, totally unbiased. Here we go.
Yeah, I just proving that this drug works is just the facts.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, other people that are poo-pooed by the establishment because it doesn't make money for them, I believe, it's my lens,
Yeah.
are saying, hey, vitamin C is a great thing to do. Like, up your vitamin C to like 3,000 milligrams a day, and then add some D2 in there and add some echinacea and, black elderberry and some other things, and increase your immunity, right? And then you'll get through this thing, no problem. So, and they're proving it. Like they have proven that
Yeah.
intravenous IV, vitamin C heals people when they're having challenges like this virus thing that we've been experiencing. So you've got these two camps that each totally believe that they're correct.
Yeah.
Or maybe one of them knows that they're really kind of just making up a story, but they're going to sell some good products.
I'll never
Who
say it out
knows?
loud. Yeah.
But see,
Yeah.
how do we navigate our way through all this? Because I know that everybody watching this broadcast went through that part of like all the information out there, and some information getting, taken off because it's not peer review verified
Yeah.
by certain mindsets. Like, how do we navigate our way through this whole mess of like all these different perspectives?
It is challenging. It is challenging. And so for me, often, it comes back to, Well, kind of a couple of things, the iamu, if it's all made up, why don't I choose to make up something that feels right for me, that intuitively feels right, and that makes me feel joy and love and peace. The second question I'll ask, if I believed or acted or thought or felt in a way that was in love, that was alignment with love, what would that look like? And if I'm wondering, I kind of intuitively check in, does this feel more like fear or does this feel more like love? And then, go the direction of love. Um, so that's just a couple of
It's
perspectives,
so
but
simple, right? And it usually
yeah,
is simple. I love the perspective though, because we are all dreaming, and I don't think that not necessarily every person on the planet realizes this is happening right now, but certainly all of those of us who have crossed over to the other side, we all get it now. We're like, oh, that's right. This is all an illusion. Like, we're dreaming this thing into being. And from the other side, I was sharing this story as sort of like when you take off in an airplane during a storm, there's all the clouds overhead, like the big black dark clouds, right?
yep,
And you think, oh my gosh, everything is all cloudy and it's terrible and it's storming and it's lightning, and it's sort of like the collective consciousness of fear.
yeah.
And then you take off in your plane and you get up to a certain point where you get above it and you go, oh, there's blue sky, there's sunshine. Like, that's always there. Okay, that's
So true.
always there.
So
So
true.
how do
It
we navigate our way through this situation?
Yeah, well, what's really cool is as of this conversation we're having, uh, just a day earlier, I recorded for the Mind Flipping podcast. Usually, I'll interview wonderful people like yourself, but every now and then I'll interview myself.
It's good to
Oh,
do.
yeah, I'll have a conversation with myself, and so uh, for your listeners that want to mind flipping, the mind flipping podcast can go to mindflipping.com. Episode 110 is just me kind of sharing my thoughts and perspectives on the current, as of our recording time, the environment with viruses and challenges. And I use that same metaphor about, the clouds, and it's very easy to, see the clouds and forget, what's behind them, that there's always, whether it's blue or clear, that it's peaceful up above. And in, whether it's, a global, crisis, or whether it's our own personal crisis where somebody we love is mad at us, or we've hurt somebody we love, and that's what's clouding our essence, our love. It's easy to forget that, above and behind and around and through all of it is just pure bliss and love. And so how do we, to answer your question, how do we reconnect with that? I think part of it is practice, listening to great people like yourself, that kind of pull us back, and we practice more and more coming back to our true essence and identity. Remembering who you are, kind of the flip side of the IAMU, the IAMU acronym, is that in addition to being an acronym for it's all made up, if we look at it also could say I am you, which reminds us that we're all connected, that could be God saying to us, Spirit saying, I am you. We are all one. And so as we go through these challenges, if we look at it as a perspective that we are all one, we are not separate, contrary to what our senses will tell us, that can bring us peace, that we're not in this alone. It's not, survival of the fittest. It's me against everybody else. It's, um, you know, it's all love, that we're all in this together. So that's just another way of perhaps bringing peace to the challenging times.
Yeah, peace. And I like that you said practice, because practice is a really important part of cultivating peace and inner peace on a regular basis, is having that regular practice. Talk a little bit more about the importance of practice in your own life and how you help people with that.
Yeah. So in my own life, we are creatures of habits. And if we aren't intentional about practicing and repeating those things that are important to us, which could be everything from, um, meditating regularly, just finding that, peaceful place in our mind and in our life, to eating better, to exercising. If we're not intentional about it, being that we are creatures of habits, it's not going to happen. So we get it on the calendar. Um, there are a lot of great books out there, resources, whether they're podcasts. I like Atomic Habits is a really cool book. Talks about just breaking down our ability to stack habits. But the other thing for those that are interested, your audience, in personal improvement, and what I like to say about mind flipping if we're again playing with the metaphor about house flipping, is unlike house flipping, renovating, updating a house, where you can actually pay somebody to do it for you. You can say, "This is what I want," and you show them pictures, and boom, they do it. Mind flipping is not a do it for me process; it's a do it yourself process. But it doesn't have to be a do it by yourself process. So to answer your question with the repetition is you find people to hold you accountable, to work with you, to give you suggestions about how you create habits and patterns and repetition of living a life that you want, whatever it is, whether it's, peacefulness in your mind, your heart, your physical goals, your financial goals, having an accountability partner, a coach, somebody that's an expert in it, uh, that will hold you along the path, because again, you have to do it. These are the things that you can't like pass off. You can't step out of your life and let somebody take it over, but you can get help.
You can get help, yeah, and it's that regular practice that makes it safe. This is when I start my programs at Butterfly Circle. The whole first third of it, that of the year, is cultivating those regular habits, those regular new practices, the spiritual practices that make it feel safe. And the reason why, and I'm sure you already know this, is because those aspects of you inside that wreak havoc, they do that when they're scared. So in order to make that sort of transition, you got to make it safe inside, because there's like little child selves in there, and like all aspects of self, right, that you uncover with hypnosis, that are scared, and they only will relax and stop the self-sabotaging patterns and things like that once they know that you got it and it's safe. Because it's sort of like, children have a hard time going to bed at sometimes, right? But if you cultivate a practice of like a little story before bed for the child goes right to sleep,
Yep.
because it's a regular routine.
I love that. That's a great awareness. What we're doing as we practice is we're just kind of shining a light on that inner child, if you will, or whatever you want to call it, that part of us that is fearful. And the more we do it, that part kind of quiets down. I like to say in the work I do with my clients, whether it's in hypnosis or coaching, is in many ways these processes that we're doing to change these habits are we're taking our inner 5-year-old, and in many ways our subconscious is like a 5-year-old, doesn't know the difference between make believe and reality, because we're having a conversation, we're kind of putting our arm around him or her and saying, hey, it's okay, thank you for doing things the way you've been doing them. You did them for what you felt was a positive and beneficial reason, but now I know better, and so this is what we're going to do. So building repetition and building practices brings out that inner child, and eventually those inner fears are gone. It's like, okay, I get it now. I feel safe, and it establishes and adapts those things into our lives.
Yeah, and then that feeling of safety is what gives you resiliency when the shit really does hit the fan. Like a lot of people out in our society right now are getting that experience that you got when you had the market turn and you had all those homes that you were trying to flip.
Yep.
Like, whoa, uh-oh, the floor just fell out, that sinking feeling, that like, oh, the floor just dropped out of my finances. How am I going to eat? You're like in survival. And it's this kind of work though that helps you to be, because where are you right now? Like this whole thing's going on, and you're calm and grounded, right? You're like, okay, this too shall pass. Like
Yeah.
not to say that there's no fear, but when it arises, how do you handle the fear now?
Yeah. Yeah. I brought this up a little bit on my recording yesterday. As we go through these things, we do become, to your point, more resilient, and we recognize there's always something really exciting on the other side. Like we understand ourselves better. We understand the world we live in. We get closer. We've peeled off a few more layers of our worldly self and got to our true spirit. And so, yeah, I have excitement and hope and optimism among all of this. Even in the last few days, I was sharing with somebody, I love doing this. I love getting together on Zoom and seeing my guests, and I love having conversations. And probably even more so, and I've been in and out of different types of sales, throughout my life, in my 3 businesses and in jobs in between. And I'm one of the few people that love making what are cold calls, where I just go in somewhere and they don't know me, I don't know them, because I love meeting people. What's been a challenge for me over the years, my inner child, if you will, has feared making phone calls, like cold phone calls. And but I've been doing it more and more. I'm just picking up the phone and forcing myself to do it. And my inner child is digging it. Like, he's quieting. He's like, hey, this is cool. Like, just because I'm not physically with somebody and I can't see somebody like I can with Carrie on Zoom, it's still safe and I'm making connections. So even at my age, at 56, I'm growing and learning.
Yeah, and I love that because I feel like this path is a path of unfolding, a path of opening, a path of learning, which takes humility to let go of what you think you know. It's sort of like the other path for me was like this idea of building something and to be really sturdy and strong and it can't be toppled over and it's fixed in place and it's my status and my money and my empire and my, like this thing is here.
Yeah.
And but it's static and it's sort of at some point the life drains out and this path is more that I'm on now is more fluid, it's more changing and it's very unpredictable and it's so fulfilling and exciting because it's like, yeah, man, I spent like my entire 401k, like learn all my stuff, right? And so people in my life think that's crazy nuts. And I'm like, yeah, but now look at me. I'm like a podcast, I interview all these amazing people. I'm in community. I know that I'm totally loved and supported. I'm very certain in my body that if any hard times came upon me, I have so many people I could reach out to that would say, Carrie Hummingbird, don't worry about that. Here's some, here's a meal or here's, don't worry about that. Here's a place to stay. I'm just not worried about it. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's a whole different way of living. And I think it's so much more from the heart. It's so loving. And I don't think we have to be so like, I know what it was like before when I had my armor up and I like had mine
Yeah.
stuff, but
Yeah.
like, I've been like letting that go. Like, I'm an only child too, by the way. So, extra challenges there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But seriously, like this sharing concept or this like knowing that you're safe in community concept. Talk a little bit about like that transition.
Well, first of all, kudos to you for letting go of, for listeners that can't see it, you're holding your arms out. It was like you're holding onto a huge column, that's, supports everything, this foundation. And yet you've let go of it. And you've been more dynamic. So kudos to you. And we do discover ourselves. And I would suggest to listeners that may be thinking to themselves, well, I just don't have that personality. I can tell Carrie is, she's free and easy. She can kind of go with the flow. But you're saying you weren't always that way.
No, I was not that way at all. I was very predictive, like obsessive predictive, like about all the things that were bad that could happen, like predicting all of it. And, predicting outcomes, talk a little bit about predicting outcomes because like that actually makes it start happening, right? Like, at least that's what I learned.
Making predictions. You tell me more. What do you mean by that? So like you were like trying to cover all your bases and predict the
Yes.
worst case scenarios and yet they still
Yes.
happened?
Why
Yeah.
do we predict the worst case scenarios? Because the worst case scenarios are the things we don't want. So why are we predicting that?
Why are we worrying about it? Now we're in that
And putting
energetic
all that
level.
energy in there. I mean, for 20
Yeah.
years, I was predicting worst case scenarios on the couch and it was happening, So I finally got the message like, wait a second, I don't want to predict worst case scenarios. I want to predict best case scenarios. So let's predict some best case scenarios. We said we were going to predict best case scenarios. Let's
Yeah.
predict best case scenarios. I would say that there'll be a significant portion of the population, at least in the United States and Canada, because I know a bunch of my, people like you across the nation, right, that are got audiences and stuff. I predict that that beneficial outcomes for us. Like I predict there'll be a bunch of people that wake up and go, you know what, I want to be as resilient as Rick.
Yeah. That sounds great. I love your prediction. I'd love to be a model. I think I am resilient. So I'll own that. I'll take that. And so that's a great prediction. Yeah, I think some of the things from this point, and again, we'll see in a few months when this actually airs. I don't think it's a reach to say that physically people will be aware of the power and taking care of themselves on a number of levels, internally and externally, washing and how they feed their body and their souls. And I think like all crisis, this isn't something that we'll probably be able to see collectively, but individually, more and more people are going to say, all right, it is time to know me and be me, to and not so much do me, like to shift from doing and running and scrambling, kind of with the blinders on. This is what I need to do, like on the hamster wheel, to coming back to their being and their spirit and who am I really? And because now, or as of this recording, perhaps in the last, few weeks or months, people had the time to listen to themselves, to invest in themselves, to take that course, to read the book, to do the craft, to write the book, to do these things that there was those perhaps little whispers in their mind that had been calling to them. And so my prediction is a lot of those, the people began listening to those little soul whispers and acting upon them. So we're going to see a lot more people living more congruent lives with who they are, less cares or concerns about, their bank account, because like you and I know, we can't take it with us. The 401k is there, whether we use it in our retirement years or we use it now, we can't take it with us. So I guess those are my predictions. Yeah, people will be more and more connected to their soul nectar.
I think people will take more time to in preventative care as well. Like I think people will realize now, a couple years ago, I started this movement called Skills Not Pills, because I really wanted to get this message across that, we could heal ourselves, and that there are alternative healing ways like hypnosis and other tools and techniques for healing that are very powerful, that that if applied, we don't need a pill to like get through the day. And I think what we've seen now through this process of the virus is that what happens when there's not a pill. So you've got to face life's challenges with your best immunity forward, with your best taking care of yourself. I think people are going to see the value now of the things that we've been talking about in the alternative health movement, about taking care of your vessel, being
100%.
proactive.
100%. I agree. And we actually didn't talk about this before we clicked record. So feel free to edit this if you like, but I've got an offer for your audience that's kind of related to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I have, I put together, and this is something that I've, processes that I've trained my coaching clients, my hypnosis clients for years. And it's called a self-care training course. So it's at selfcaretrainingcourse.com. And if your listeners use Soul Nectar Gift, GIFT, they can get it for free. It's $197 value. And what it is, and what made me think about it is, like you said, what happens when we can't get our pills? We can't get those things that we're dependent on. This self-care training course has 17 videos and 8 audios. They're processes, things that we can do in the moment when we're when we're in an unwanted state. So if we're feeling stressed or anxious or lonely, or if we have a craving for something that we don't want to have a craving for, these are all just different processes that in the moment we always have with us. So they're mindfulness process, they're neuro-linguistic programming processes, they're hypnotic processes, but they're things that once we play with them and practice, they're always with us. That we don't need to get the prescription. We don't need to run to the store. And they work. They're simple yet powerful processes of getting us back to our true self, a state of love, of peace, of at worst being more centered than we were, seconds or minutes ago. So selfcaretrainingcourse.com, and then use the coupon code Soul Nectar Gift, and you get it for free.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah. This is right along the lines of what I wanted people to know about in the Skills Not Pills movement. That wasn't about judging people. It was about just sharing from my heart, like, hey, I relied on those pills too, and they didn't work for me, and I'm so much happier now. And I just never get sick. I never get sick. I don't have any like weird psychological, emotional issues anymore. I'm very grounded and resilient, and I don't have any of those pills. Like, I'm not on any pills. I'm on, nature. And that's the way to be. And I hope people hear that message. That's my prediction, is people be ready for that message now. They're going to hear it. And now we're going to give them your gift so they can. Yeah, that's great. So I have one more question for you. Well, and then I'm going to ask you to offer anything you want to offer.
Yeah.
But when you go to these hypnosis conferences, do you guys just like hypnotize each other? I mean, how do you go to hypnosis conference and stay lucid? Or is that the point? Like, are you lucid because you're hypnotized? I mean, I know trance state is kind of closer to reality than reality is. So
Yeah.
like, what's the dream and what's the reality? But like, what happens at those conferences?
It's funny. That's a great question. I love that. And there is some truth to that. We do hypnotize each other a lot. So there's a lot of hypnosis conferences, and at them there's we share a lot of different perspectives, processes. The last one that I spoke at was just a month ago. I was in Vegas and spoke on creating a hypnosis side hustle business. In fact, I've got an offer that for your listeners. We'll come back to that. But yeah, so my talk was on how you can create a part-time hypnosis business. A friend of mine, Roger Moore, not the actor, but Roger Moore, he's a hypnotist in Palm Springs. Uh, he does a lot with hypnosis for dementia and end of life. And there were people there, that talk about weight loss and how to create products. So there's ways to monetize your skills, ways to make an impact in the world, and then in and among that, we put each other, quote unquote, to sleep. We play hypnosis a lot, so it's really fun. I was thinking earlier, and as long as we're talking about this now, I'll just come back to what you talked about, how there's all these different perspectives, like who do you believe? There's all this research for these pills, and then there's all these research for vitamin C. And even in our industry, and we see it at our hypnosis conferences, there are long-time, very successful professional hypnotists and hypnotherapists that have one technique. For instance, and this is just one of them, they'll use regression, where they'll regress their clients to what they call the initial sensitizing event to create the change. And there's a whole nother group of long-time, very successful professional hypnotherapists that would never do that. They say, you don't do that. There's no reason to go back. It's only about what's in the moment now. And they both work. There's like these conflicting opinions, and yet they're both professional, they're loving, they're caring, they get results. And so it's not often either, but and.
And yeah, it's not or, it's about and. And
Yeah.
also on that note, I want to just say one of the things I've learned is that people have different human design types. And so that could explain why things don't work the same for every single person, right? We're all built different.
Yeah. And you can have a sense of peace in knowing that you'll be attracted to the one that's right for you. And if you are attracted to somebody that wasn't right for you, that there was a reason for it. That there was something you needed to learn there. And I tell myself that, because obviously, we can't help everybody. If every hypnotist, hypnotherapist, coach could help everybody, we wouldn't need us. We'd have it all figured out. And so I just trust that the people come to me, are coming to me for a reason. They learn what they need to learn. They shift the way they need to shift, and I let go of the rest. I do my part and let it go. What else? You had another question about the
I agree.
conferences.
No, I was just saying,
No.
I just have this, I have this vision in my head of everybody just like zoned and tranced out at the conference. But
Yep.
what I realize is that, we have an all-night ceremony that we do as part of our lineage, in our spiritual lineage. And you stay up all night, and periodically throughout the night, you light a candle and you stare at the flame in the candle, because it's all about connecting with the spirit, the energy of fire, which is a purification energy. It's a purification. It's light. It's the light in the middle of the night, right? Like it's the sunlight you can access it right in the middle of the night. And so you light it and you connect with the light, and in the middle of the dark. And that put me in such a trance. We just did it all night long, and I was like, what it did for me is it opened up this portal of love, like this huge portal of love just expanded. And I just, by the end of the night, I just felt so much love, because I was so present with this fire and with the candle and all of this. So I started realizing, oh, wait a second, like this is the dream. The dream is actually the life they're walking around, and you're experiencing all these things. Your mind is getting distracted, and it's thinking about this, that, or the other thing you got to get done. But the truth is that love is truth, is unlocked in that trance is the truth. And so it's opposite of what people think. Mind flip.
Yeah, mind flip. Yeah, it's so many levels. It is, that flip of the mind. It's the exact opposite of what we believe. And you hit the nail on the head. I see it so often in hypnotic trances and through hypnosis or meditation or things that when we get our monkey mind, our earthly mind out of the way, we're connected to truths that And that's where magic happens. People will just say, how did this happen? I've had clients come back to me for a follow-up session or at their next session. They're like, what did you say to me the last session? Because I swear I remember everything, but everything is different. And it wasn't about me. It was them just really connecting to truth, to love, to light, not this illusion that we, kind of get stuck in.
Yeah, the illusion that we get stuck in. So speaking of illusions, on the other side of the illusion of the coronavirus and the collective consciousness agreement that we were going to go through this experience collectively, and for a bunch of people that needed, some dismantling of structures in their lives in order to make changes. So on the other side of that, what's the best way that those of us who are going through that experience can help ourselves? And then what's the best way that some of us who are on the other side, maybe not fully grounded and on the other side, but like on the way, can support people who are going through some crazy, tumultuous stuff right now?
Well, my answer always comes back to love, probably for both of them. So if you're in it and trying to figure out how to get through it, or you're on the other side and still trying to figure out how to get through it, I guess my suggestion or thought, and I hate to give it advice, but so I like to say I share perspectives. And my perspective is, if it's true that this is all made up, that we are our life and who we are and how we live is our own creation. Whether we, and when I say it's an illusion, I'm not implying or trying to imply that this isn't reality, because this is our reality. But an illusion just means it's not what it appears to be. And so my suggestion would be to think about what feels right, what is loving to you, and let that be your focus. So imagine living, feeling, being in something that feels right for you, and let that be your focus. And go beyond your five senses. Go beyond the number on the bank account if that's stressing you, or the number on the scale, or something that somebody said. Because our whether it's our subconscious or our higher conscious, they don't know the difference between make believe and reality. So let's make believe. Let's imagine something lovingly, and follow that path for a while and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it can't hurt to follow love, right? I mean, just
Yeah.
see what happens. I mean, run an experiment. I like to tell people to run experiments, because that way, you're just seeing what happens. That's
Yep.
all.
What do you got to lose?
You got nothing to lose.
Everything to
Sitting in your
gain.
house anyway. So
Yeah.
hopefully by now you're out and free.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks, Rick, so much for being on the show. And I'll definitely put the links. Did you want to give me a link to the hypnosis? You had a hypnosis course
Oh
or
yeah.
something you wanted
Yeah,
to.
yeah. So hypnosisidehustle.com, hypnosis side hustle. It's a complete course. There's, oh my gosh, there's a ton of stuff in there. And if for that, I've got a different code. So that'll take your listeners to my teachable courses. And if they just use Soul Nectar, they can get anything in my teachable, including at hypnosissidehustle.com, for half price. So I've never offered it for that. It's just for you, because I love you, Carrie, and your audience.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Beautiful. Well, you guys check out those. I will put those links into the show notes, as well as the codes that you can use to grab that for yourself. And, this is a time to experiment being a dreamer. We are dreaming awake and we are dreaming asleep. We're dreaming all the time. And if you've ever had a nightmare, then you may have had that moment where you realize that you could change the outcome of your dream, because you didn't like that outcome. So you said, I'm going to change that outcome. Well, you can change the outcome of your life just the same way, just by becoming a really good dreamer, right, Rick?
Amen. I love it. So true.
Yeah. All right. Well, love you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And hey, before you just abandon this broadcast, could you click like and maybe even like 5-star us on iTunes or YouTube or wherever you found us? Could you give us some love and help share this out so more people see it who might really need this message, and they might find it because you shared it out somewhere. So thank you for giving us that gift. In return, we really appreciate it. And I'm going to give you kisses now. Would you like to join me, Rick? We're going to give kisses out there. These are
Let's
virtual
do it.
kisses, so we can't spread any germs this way.
Let's do it.
Here they come, everybody. Mm. Love you. See you next time on Soul Nectar Show, everybody. Bye for now.